Just let me eat." Dario leaned his head against Jade's shoulder. He kissed her earlobe, which sent a wave of shivers coursing through her body. His breathing had grown extremely labored. He sounded as if he had just spent 2 hours overexerting himself at the gym, but in reality, he was trying to hold back emotions that were threatening to overtake him. "Now you're going to have to put out this fire that you lit," he said. Dario could feel Jade trembling beneath his hands, and he couldn't stop himself from lowering his lips to her mouth. Then he slowly carried on down to her collarbone and to the smooth skin at the top of her chest. His lips continued exploring every bit of her body that he could reach, section by section, until he broke through her defenses, and she let out a moan. Then she shook her head. Dario, don't be like this," she said. "Do you really want me to stop?" he asked. He had already lifted her pajamas when she wasn't paying attention and had brazenly started stroking her skin. Jade, in a daze, narrowed her eyes and locked onto his, which were brimming with love and desire. She freed herself from his embrace and bit her lower lip. Suddenly, she calmed down and declared, "Well, I still want to eat." "Eat? Is that what's on your mind right now?" Dario asked, raising his eyebrows. "Food is more important to her than I am," he thought with annoyance when he saw her staring at the dishes on the table. "I'm going to have to cook less tasty fare in the future," he decided. Jade noticed his disapproval and was quick to explain herself. "I think you misunderstood me. I wasn't full yet, so I wanted to eat a bit more. That's why I came over to your side of the table. Anyway, if I'm still hungry, I won't have the strength for what you want to do." When she said that, her face went red. But she had managed to diffuse the charged atmosphere in the room, and Dario forced himself to suppress his urges. "In that case, let's feed our stomachs first." He pulled her pajama top back down and patted her stomach and picked up the fork to feed her. "Let me eat on my own," she said. "I really want to feed you. Let me do it," he insisted. "Okay," Jade agreed, relenting. It took her half an hour to finish what was on the plate, and Dario was cheating. In between bites, he continued caressing and kissing her. He just wouldn't let her eat in peace. "I must remember to keep my distance from him at mealtimes," she thought. She pretended to be inconvenienced, but in fact, every time she saw him struggling to control his passion, her heart swelled with happiness. After she finished dinner, Jade was about to wash the dishes when Dario went in behind her to do it himself and chased her out of the kitchen. He even locked the door, which Jade thought very funny. "Dario, can I borrow your computer?" she asked in a voice loud enough that he could hear her over the running water. "Caroline said I need to get a social media account." She didn't have one because, up to then, she'd been a nobody. But now that she was becoming famous, a social media account would increase her popularity and also allow her to interact with her fans. Caroline had told her that if she opened one, the company would help her promote it. "Go ahead," Dario said as he washed the dishes. Jade went into the study. She had just turned on Dario's computer when she saw something that made her blush. "This can't be," she muttered. On top of his desk was her new photo. That's right, the photo of the magazine cover she had just taken at the beach. Her jaw dropped in surprise. Even she hadn't received a copy of the picture, and Dario already had one on display in his study. There was a folder sitting right next to it, and her curiosity got the better of her. When she opened it, she was stunned. There was a whole series of photos of her, and even more surprising, it was full of old pictures of her acting. It looked like they were taken directly from the TV series. She was so moved that her eyes brimmed with tears. The last thing she had expected was for him to care about her so much that he would have put that collection together. She'd often wondered if she was perhaps no more than a plaything to him. After successfully signing up for her social media account, since she had nothing else to do, she decided to tidy the study. From now on, she wanted to be the best possible wife. She'd been in that apartment for so long yet, she'd really never spent any time tidying it. She was quite excited as she organized the objects on the table. Dario was sure to notice her efforts. She opened a drawer to put some things away when she saw a beautiful small box. It was at the very back of the drawer, as if it had been hidden away. She sat down and couldn't resist opening it. Inside, there was a necklace. It was made of round purple diamonds with a small square silver pendant hanging from it. It sparkled brightly in the lamplight and looked a little old. The necklace seemed familiar to Jade. She recalled that the last time she'd gone into the study looking for Dario, he'd been holding it in his hand and looking at it seriously as if studying it. Just when Jade was wondering why there was something belonging to another woman there, she noticed a figure at the door. Episode 202. This belongs to another woman. Jade reacted with shame when Dario caught her with the necklace in her hand. Although they were husband and wife, it didn't seem right to her to have been prying into the contents of his drawers. She immediately picked up the box and said awkwardly, I wasn't prying. I was tidying up your desk and just happened to see it. After saying that, she hurriedly put the necklace back into the box and carefully arranged it. But when she thought about it, she felt that something wasn't right. Why was there a piece of women's jewelry in his study? It was clearly not his, and nor was it hers. In other words, it belonged to another woman. Dario didn't say anything and gave her a blank look. He didn't seem embarrassed at having been caught out. He just gazed at her serenely. Jade watched him. In the end, she asked, Dario, is this necklace yours? Whose is it? Dario walked in, took the box from her hand, and put it back in the drawer. Is it important for you to know? He asked. Jade was unhappy with his answer, but tried not to show it. No, just asking, she said coldly. If you like necklaces, I can buy one for you, but I can't give you that one, Dario suddenly said in a very serious tone. Jade's facial expression changed drastically. She originally hadn't attached too much importance to her discovery, but now, hearing those words and thinking how he had snatched it away from her, she was angry. He had been hiding things from her. Who cares about the necklace? Jade slammed the drawer closed. Then she got up and said icily to him, I'm going to sleep. But she had only taken one step when Dario hugged her from behind. His dark eyes stared at her, and he asked in a deep voice, What's wrong? Are you angry? What's there to be angry about? Isn't it just a woman's necklace? Tomorrow, I will put some men's things in my drawers, Jade spat out. Dario stared at her jealous face, and a trace of a smile flashed across his eyes. He held her tightly in his arms and leaned close to her ear. You can try if you think it will annoy me. Do you think I'll rip your drawers out? Jade's face twitched. She believed that he could really do such a thing, but he was just talking non-committedly. Let go of me. Jade tried to pry his arms apart, but no matter how much strength she used, Dario didn't budge. She was so angry that she stomped her feet like a toddler. Why does he bully me like this? She thought. Then what do you want me to do? Do you want me to give that necklace to you, or do you want me to throw it away? Dario watched her expression change. After a long time, his face darkened again. He said in a serious tone, But that necklace, I can't give it away, and I can't throw it away. If you really like it, I'll buy you a better one. Jade exploded in anger. She turned around with a red face and glared at him fiercely. Oh, Dario, you awful guy, I'll bite you to death. Jade didn't know if he was serious about what he had just said, or if he was trying to anger her. Regardless, she was furious. As he made no movement, Jade bared her teeth and pretended to bite his chest. She wondered why his muscles were so hard. She had never known him to go to the gym. Seeing that her teeth were useless, she used her nails again and scratched his arm. And seeing that to bite his arm, she wouldn't have to twist around, she bit down. He trembled slightly and she felt better. Who asked him to keep angering me? Would he have died if he'd swallowed his words? She thought. Dario offered no resistance. He let her scratch and bite him, and he looked at her flushed face with interest. When she stopped for a moment, he said something that infuriated her even more. Are you biting or licking me? By the way, I almost forgot that a certain woman said that I could do whatever I wanted tonight. Did you think I'd forget? Jade tensed up. What's gone wrong here? Wasn't I questioning him about the necklace? What's up with the change of subject? Damn it, she thought. She looked at the handsome man in front of her angrily. She would always be at a disadvantage when she talked to him. He always had to win. Jade bit her lower lip and clenched her fists. After a while, she calmed down a bit. Finally, she couldn't suppress her curiosity and asked, You hid that necklace so well. Is it the necklace that's important or the necklace's owner? Is there someone else in your heart? Jade almost broke out in a cold sweat when she asked the question. She didn't know what kind of answer she wanted to get. She didn't know anything about his past relationships. I have an ex-boyfriend, but what about him? Has he been in a serious relationship before? Has he been with a girlfriend he loved and that I don't know about? She wondered. Could the owner of the necklace have been a woman he loved? And since he's still keeping it, does that mean she's still important to him? She didn't know, and she didn't understand. What made her most exacerbated was the one-word answer he suddenly gave her. Yes. She took a deep breath and her face crumpled with sadness. She looked at the man in front of her with hatred in her eyes and said to him through gritted teeth, "Oh, Dario, you're so good at this. Okay, you win." After saying that, she stomped on his foot angrily and struggled to get out of his arms. Episode 203. He can always make me angry. Dario looked at Jade's angry eyes and took her hand. He placed it over his heart, letting her feel how intensely it was beating. "What are you doing?" Jade snapped, looking at him unhappily. "Can you feel it? It's beating for you, because you are the most important person to me in this world. You are the only one in my heart, right now and forever." He looked at her quietly. It was rare for his eyes to radiate such deep affection and gentleness. Feeling his heartbeat, she slowly stopped struggling. It was beating so strongly that it seemed as if it was about to jump out of his chest. Is this true? Why then did he say that the owner of the necklace was so important? Jade wondered. Dario noticed her doubtful look and tried to explain. "That necklace was not given to me by anyone, and I didn't buy it. I picked it up by accident. But I really didn't expect you to care so much about it." Jade bit her lip and stood apart from him with her hands on her hips. She couldn't help but mutter with irritation and jealousy in her voice. "We treasure so strongly those things we pick up by accident. Amazing, wouldn't you say? Regardless of whether you believe it or not, what I said is the truth. Are you jealous?" he asked. He looked in amusement at her pose. She was so cute. "Yeah, I'm just jealous. How about it? Who told you to hide something that belongs to another woman in your drawer? I'm so petty," Jade said, almost shouting. After having had her say, Jade felt her throat tighten. She had never thought that one day she would become the sort of unreasonable, nagging woman who would feel the need to keep an eye on her husband at all times. But also, she had never thought that her feelings for Dario would run so deep. She loved him so much that she wanted to be certain that he belonged to her alone. She couldn't tolerate another woman's possessions near him. It was like that time she'd smelled a woman's perfume on him. On that occasion, her jealousy had made her think she was losing her mind. If I became like that, won't it turn him off? She asked herself. She felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she resisted the urge to cry. She turned to leave the room, but before she could reach the door, Dario had caught up with her and grabbed her wrist. He felt a sharp pain pierce his heart when he saw her sadness. He hugged her and said in a deep voice, "I'm so sorry. Please don't cry. I should have told you about the necklace earlier, but I didn't take your feelings into consideration. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." Jade was stunned by his sincere apology. What was going on? The high and mighty Dario, who never lowered his head, had actually apologized to her. Dario, who never made mistakes, had actually admitted to a mistake. Did I hear right? She wondered. Seeing the look of guilt in his eyes, Jade didn't know what to do. She stuttered and said, I was just curious about why you put a woman's necklace in the drawer. I'm sorry. I was being petty to lose my temper over something so small. I should believe you." She dipped her head in shame. She didn't know why, but with anything related to Dario, she always became suspicious and let her imagination run wild. As she had taken the decision to be with him, she should trust him fully instead of being so skeptical. She remembered how she had reacted to the incident with Monica, and now she had just lost her temper over a trivial necklace and had even lashed out at him. I really shouldn't have acted like that, she thought. It's not because you're petty. It's because I occupy too much of your heart. You want to enjoy me alone, right? Dario stretched out his hand and gently wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. He looked at her reddened eyes and felt his heart ache. Jade's heart jumped when she heard him read her mind. Why does he know everything? She wondered. However, she wasn't willing to admit he was right. With a stubborn frown, she said, "No, I'm just a petty person. It's a small space that you occupy in my heart. Don't be so arrogant." She had suffered too much with Bruce, and she hadn't recovered yet. She had given herself to Bruce, and in the end, he had left her. She wasn't sure yet that she should open her entire heart to the man standing in front of her. "Oh, is that so? Earlier you kept saying that you love me. What, have you changed your mind now?" Dario's deep voice rang in her ears, and what he said made her feel even more ashamed. "When did I keep saying that I love you? You heard it wrong," Jade said, blushing. "Look, didn't you just say it again? I just want you to admit that you were jealous. Is that so hard?" Dario hugged her soft body and slowly rubbed noses with her. Jade was touched by this gentle gesture. However, she was also afraid that one day that gentleness would end. "I'm not jealous," she said. "Why don't you admit that you are jealous?" she muttered with a pout. In truth, she was very hesitant to hand over her heart again. However, she was in love with him, and that was undeniable. "I've never been jealous. So how could I admit to that?" Dario asked back. He looked into her eyes, and Jade felt her hair stand on end. It was as if she'd been holding her breath, and now she couldn't breathe. "Dario?" What she wanted to say next made her so angry that she swallowed hard and bit her tongue. Now, she finally realized that Dario had 1,000 ways to make her angry, and each was very different. But she didn't want to be angered to death. Episode 204. No one will come between us. Jade stared at him in silence. Would this man die suddenly if he didn't say anything to anger her? Dario gave her a little smile. Taking advantage of her carelessness, he'd picked her up in the air and kissed her on the mouth. "Let's go back to our room to sleep," he said. Jade twisted her body around and let him carry her to the bedroom. "I'll be right back after I take a shower." Dario kissed her on the lips and left the room. Jade listened to the sound of flowing water as she lay on the bed, tossing and turning. She tried to fall asleep but found that she couldn't. Dario returned quickly and lay down beside her. His body was cold and still a little wet, and it felt nice to lean against. He also smelled good. When he saw that Jade was still awake, he immediately put his hands around her waist. Just when he was about to kiss her, Jade turned her head away. She frowned. She still had doubts, and knew that if she didn't clear them up, they would fester inside and end up harming them. "Dario, is the owner of that necklace really important to you?" She was still brooding over that. Maybe he'd been joking, but what if he had not? Dario narrowed his eyes and stared at her. He was surprised that she cared so much about the necklace. It did seem to prove that she really loved him. He sighed. He couldn't help but think back to 5 years before. The woman he had met then still affected him deeply. He'd been looking for her all this time. He believed that one day they would run into each other again. When he thought of this, his dark eyes suddenly became more intense. Unfortunately, he didn't know what she looked like. And she had a common name, so it was like searching for a needle in a haystack. However, he was convinced that there was no one in this world that he wouldn't eventually be able to find if he set his mind to it. However, the most important person to him right now was the woman lying next to him. After a long time had passed, he said faintly, "I picked up that necklace accidentally 5 years ago. I kept it there in the drawer because I hoped that one day it could return to its original owner. Perhaps the necklace is very important to her, don't you think?" Dario had a distant look in his eyes. Jade glanced at him. She was not satisfied with his answer. She only knew that the necklace had meaning for him. There was obviously another person in his heart, but she now believed that the relationship between them was not what she had imagined. She kept telling herself that she had to trust him wholeheartedly. She leaned against his chest in silence. All she could hear was his heartbeat, which seemed much faster than usual. She believed him when he said that it was so fast because she was beside him. Dario held her tightly in his arms. Seeing her so silent, he started to panic. He thought that she was truly angry. He hurriedly hugged her more and kissed her forehead. He stroked her hair and said, "When I find that girl, I'll return the necklace to her. You're the only one in my heart. My heart will always belong to you. No one will come between us." He knew what worried her. What he needed to do now was get her to trust him. Jade let his words sweep through her mind. "My heart will always belong to you. No one will come between us. She slowly calmed down, heaved a sigh of relief, and stretched out her hand to stroke his neck. She quietly buried her head in his chest and felt the warmth of his body. As she rarely took such an initiative, Dario's heart swelled with love. "I know," she said. "I won't mention that necklace again." She knew that if she continued to pester him, it would serve no purpose. It might even make Dario hate her. The best thing she could do was to forget all about it. "You only care because you love me so much," he said. Before Jade could react, he rolled on top of her, kissing her lips. Jade's heart skipped a beat. She was a little nervous because she could feel his heat through her pajamas. Dario was in no hurry, and his movements were tender. His kisses sent electrical surges through her body, and she slowly fell into a rhythm with him. Soon they were enveloped in a cloud of love and desire. Jade said shyly to him, "Dario, I have to make an appearance tomorrow. Can we do it just once today?" "Okay," he replied. And it was only once, but it lasted 2 hours. Jade lay on the bed exhausted, wondering where he got his stamina from. Dario prepared a basin of hot water and took a face cloth to refresh her before hugging her to sleep. The next day, when Jade opened her eyes, she was alone in the room. She touched Dario's side of the bed and it wasn't cold. There was still a trace of warmth on the sheets, which meant he must have just woken up. Episode 205. Excitement. Jade was afraid she wouldn't see Dario because she'd woken up late, and he had probably already left for work. So she jumped out of bed and, feeling nervous, went to look for him. She found him, already dressed, preparing breakfast in the kitchen. Her mood was suddenly much better, as bright as the sun outside. Dario was so engrossed in making breakfast that he didn't notice her come in. Jade quietly walked up behind him, put her arms around his waist, and hugged him. "Good morning," she said happily, burying her head into his muscular back. Jade rarely took the initiative to be affectionate, so Dario was surprised. He couldn't help but smile. He put the things in his hands down and turned around to look at her. His deep voice was gentle. "Why are you up so early? I haven't even finished cooking breakfast yet." Jade lowered her eyes and said, "If I don't get up earlier, how do I get to see you before work?" Dario was happy at what he heard. It seemed he was important to her and had a place in her heart. He reached out his hand and tweaked her nose affectionately, his eyes filled with love. He bent down to kiss her. Jade had wanted to raise her lips to meet his, but then she suddenly had second thoughts and lowered her head, dodging the kiss. Her involuntarily reflex surprised Dario, and his expression darkened. "What? Are you still angry about yesterday?" he asked seriously. "No, I haven't brushed my teeth yet," Jade said, covering her mouth in embarrassment. She had jumped out of bed and had not thought to comb her hair or brush her teeth. "I must look like a real mess," she thought. "Imagine if he'd kissed me and smelled my stinky breath." But Dario didn't mind and reached out to hold her face in his hands before lowering his lips to hers and kissing her passionately. Jade didn't resist. She responded eagerly, entangling her tongue with his, and made small sucking noises in answer to his. She felt like she was on fire. Her reaction ignited Dario's passion, and his heart started to race. He pressed her against the kitchen wall, embracing her tightly, and continued kissing her until she struggled for breath. Dario reluctantly lifted his lips from hers and supported her soft body against his. The atmosphere in the kitchen was electric. Jade leaned weakly against Dario's chest. She felt as if all her strength had been drained from her body. Her knees were weak, and she couldn't stand steadily. Her mind was blank, but she knew she wanted more. Jade was still in her pajamas, so Dario only needed to touch her lightly to arouse her. His touch was addictive. Jade groaned, licking her lips. Then she let out an ambiguous gasp. When Dario heard this, he at once took control, picking her up and carrying her to the bedroom. Once he placed her on the bed, he impatiently kissed her again while trying to undress her. The phone rang, interrupting them. Dario frowned and ignored it, continuing to kiss Jade's trembling body. But the person on the phone was persistent and continued calling. A realization hit Jade, and she opened her eyes wide, remembering that she was expecting a call from the agency. It could be Caroline calling, she thought, immediately alert. Jade struggled from under Dario's body to reach for her phone. As she was about to answer it, Dario grabbed her from behind, snatched her phone, and silenced the call. But she had already seen from the caller ID that it was Caroline, so she hurriedly sat up and looked at Dario pleadingly. "Please, pass me the phone, Dario. It's Caroline from the agency. I need to answer. It might be something important about today's schedule." Dario looked at her pleading face, and the coldness in his eyes softened a little. "It's not as important as this matter. You couldn't wait to come and see me in your pajamas and seduce me. So how can I disappoint you?" he said. Jade started to feel uncomfortable under his scorching gaze and grabbed the blanket to cover herself, wrapping herself in it tightly. "I'm not letting him do what he did yesterday," she thought. He had delayed her by 2 hours, and she'd been afraid that she would be late for her photo shoot. This time, she wouldn't give in. She was starting to feel concerned that his demands would soon affect her career. "Oh, please, I only wanted to see you before you left for work. That's why I came to find you, nothing more," Jade said discontentedly, rolling her eyes at him. "Little fool," Dario responded, giving her a long kiss before reluctantly returning her phone. "I really want her, but I shouldn't interfere with her work," he thought. "I don't want to break her wings." Jade immediately answered the phone when it rang again. Luckily, Caroline was not very angry. "Today's photo shoot is temporarily cancelled," Caroline informed her and continued. "But there is a more lucrative offer on the table. The world's most famous cosmetic brand, Adele Barbeque, wants you to sign on to endorse their products." This company was much more influential than that day's client. Caroline had decided to reschedule the photo shoot because she needed them to travel to New York immediately to negotiate the contract. What she needed to do now was book their flights. "Pack an overnight bag. We might have to stay there tonight," she instructed Jade. Jade looked at her phone in shock. She was unaware of how powerful the brand that Caroline had mentioned was, but Caroline was usually cold and stern, and she could hear the excitement in her voice. Episode 206. What job do you do? While Jade was on the call to Caroline, Dario went to the bathroom to take a cold shower. He needed to cool his desire, and since he had met Jade, he'd taken cold baths or showers almost daily. He was getting used to them. After Jade hung up, she wanted to immediately take a shower and change, but Dario was busy showering, so she started to pack her overnight bag. Then she remembered that Dario had been cooking, and she hurried to the kitchen to see what he'd been preparing for breakfast. There were eggs, bacon, and toast, so it seemed that breakfast was a bacon and egg sandwich. Jade immediately got to work. By the time Dario came to the kitchen, she was done and carrying the plates to the table. He reached out, took the plates from her, and then, with a mock scold, said, "Remember, I like to be in the kitchen so we can cook together." "I know you're a family man," Jade said teasingly. Her heart filled with happiness. She felt lucky that she had married an all-rounder who knew how to cook, wash, and clean. "By the way, Caroline and I are flying to New York today to negotiate a contract with a cosmetics company for me to endorse their products. We might not be back tonight," Jade said. "I hate being away from him," she thought sadly. Dario nodded, deep in thought. "Do you have a plane ticket yet?" he asked. "Oh, no, not yet. Caroline said she's going to book them and let me know. She asked me to get ready." "Call her and tell her I'll book for us. I'm going with you," Dario said matter-of-factly. Jade choked on her coffee. "Did I hear right?" she thought in shock. "You want to travel with me? Don't you have work?" she asked, frowning. Dario was quiet for a moment and replied, "I'll ask the boss for leave." But he was the boss, so he didn't need anyone's permission. "Oh, but you don't need to ask for leave to come with me. Caroline will be with me, so you don't need to worry," Jade said, feeling independent. She was flattered by his concern. "Oh, I'm not worried. I'm going to New York today anyway. There's something I need to do there," Dario responded. Jade's face flushed with anger. He hadn't told her he was traveling to New York that day. He wasn't accompanying her out of concern, but because he was going anyway. "Forget it. I can't be bothered to argue with him right now," she thought in frustration. She was learning fast that she could never win. It suddenly dawned on Jade that Dario seemed to be able to take leave from work easily. "By the way, you said you also worked at the Milliken agency. What do you do there? Why haven't I ever seen you there?" Jade asked curiously. "My office is on the top floor and people don't usually see me," he answered casually, but his eyes had an unusual look. "Oh, the top floor. No wonder I've never seen him," Jade thought. She'd heard that the higher an employee's position in the company, the higher their office was in the building, and Milliken Agency's building had 20 floors. If his office is on the top floor, he's probably more influential than Caroline McCoy, as her office is only on the 10th floor. He must be at least a supervisor, she thought. Thinking about it, it made sense. He could afford expensive things, so his salary must be high. What kind of job in the agency pays so much? She thought, inquisitively. So what exactly do you do? She asked, locking her eyes with his. Are you powerful? Sort of, Dario said, twitching under her gaze. He should be considered powerful. After all, everyone had to listen to him. Then why would you care about taking leave? Jade asked petulantly. Dario realized she wouldn't give up on her line of questioning until she knew the answer. He thought for a while and then gave a simple answer. I'm the one who takes care of the agency's money. Well, after all, that's the truth. All the money belongs to me, he thought smugly. Jade's eyes widened in surprise. Oh, so you're the one who pays the salaries? She asked. Yes, Dario answered. Jade had guessed that he was in the financial department, but he looks more like a boss than an accountant, she thought. She still had so many unanswered questions. The Milliken Agency is very successful, so if he looks after the money, he must be special, she thought, contemptively. It was a prominent and influential company, and it was rumored that the office building's construction had cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The owner must be hugely wealthy, Jade thought. She knew he was notoriously private, and she didn't know anything about him. Oh, so you're the department's head or something? Jade asked. She couldn't think of a job level that was higher than this. Dario didn't answer, and Jade became more and more impatient. She scrutinized him closely. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that he was hiding something from her and not being entirely truthful. How can a person who looks after the agency's finances, which means he knows the value of money, buy me gifts that cost millions of dollars? She thought, in confusion. Episode 207. The Private Jet. It's all very strange, Jade thought. Logically, Dario shouldn't have as much money as he spent. Maybe he's a famous actor, she thought. He had the talent and looks to be an actor, but she knew he wasn't one because she would have recognized him. So where does his money come from? An inheritance? A wealthy family? The more Jade thought, the more confused and concerned she became. Many scenarios played out in her head. Maybe he's wealthy because he's a thief, or involved in something else illegal, she thought with dismay. The idea that he might be a criminal shocked her, and she looked at him with panic evident on her face. Dario could tell from her expression that she was deep in thought, and she looked nervous. He was interested to hear what she would say next, so he patiently waited for her to speak. Unexpectedly, Jade put down the spoon in her hand and looked at him thoughtfully. Dario, tell me, are you stealing from the agency? It's not good to bite the hand that feeds you, or laundering money? Is that why you're so rich? Dario choked on his coffee. His face twitched, and his dark eyes narrowed. Sometimes I want to pry her little head open to take a good look at what's going on in there, he thought in amusement. She had such an active imagination. He stared at her somewhat flustered eyes and said, Jade, do you think I'm a criminal? That the money I spend is illegal? He pronounced each word carefully. Jade blinked her eyes nervously and thought cautiously before responding. He didn't seem to be a criminal. He dressed well and was refined, not what she would expect from someone involved in the underworld. She shook her head firmly and said with a trace of doubt, I know it wouldn't be true to your nature, but how do you explain that you have so much money and you don't look like an ordinary person at all? Do you have other ways to earn money besides a salary? When she thought about where that money might have come from, she grew concerned. She was flustered and her eyebrows were furrowed. Dario sat down opposite her and asked calmly, If I was that kind of person, would you leave me? He was testing her and interested in her response. He knew she was naive and wondered what she would do if her life wasn't as perfect as she imagined. Dario thought that Jade would hesitate before answering. Instead, she slammed her fists on the table, startling him. Her strength surprised him. Then, she stared at him intently and said firmly, It won't happen. I'll never leave you. No matter how you get your money, If it's from your parents, I'll work harder to earn money so we can pay them back. If it's illegal money, I'll take responsibility with you. After Caroline and I negotiate the contract with Adele Barracu today, I'll have money to help. I'll work hard so you don't have to do anything illicit. Jade trailed off, her voice rising and her words becoming incoherent. She didn't know how to express her thoughts clearly. She had answered truthfully. She had chosen him freely and would stand by him no matter what. She didn't care about money. She had managed without it for many years. As long as they were together, she would be happy. Dario was taken aback. He had not expected Jade to be forceful enough to say what she had said. She was seemingly so gentle, but she had spoken with passion and commitment. He gathered her into a tight hug, then kissed her gently on the forehead before finding her lips. Jade didn't resist, but surrendered herself to him, her body trembling. He gently reached out his hand and touched her cheek. Don't worry, the money's clean. I don't do anything illegal. His deep voice was like magic, causing her to sink further into his embrace. With that, he gave her another kiss on the forehead, almost as if to mark her as his property. I wouldn't do anything that jeopardized you or me, he continued. Then you earn all your money yourself? Jade asked. She was relieved to hear what he had said, and she chose to believe him. She still didn't know how he got the money, but it wasn't illegal. You'll find out where it's from in time, Dario said, patting her back as if to reassure her. Let's finish breakfast, and then we'll organize our trip to New York. He took a bite of the cold egg and bacon sandwich and chewed slowly. No need. I'll call Caroline and ask her to buy another ticket. I'll arrange to give her the extra money. There's no need to buy plane tickets. We'll fly directly, he said. Catch a plane without tickets? What plane? Jade retorted in surprise. She didn't know what he meant. Don't worry, let's organize ourselves. Dario responded and started to pack his and Jade's overnight bags. She seemed to be getting in the way, so she eventually sat and watched him pack. He was meticulous, even packing her skincare products, toothbrush, clothes, and shoes for that evening and the next day. Jade couldn't help but admire Dario's ability to organize. Once they were ready, they left home and drove to Washington's largest private airport. It was only when they walked to a private jet that Jade finally understood. Once aboard the jet and seated, Jade took in her luxurious surroundings. It was like a high-class hotel. There was a bar area and what appeared to be a bedroom, office and gym. There was seating for about 17 passengers, and a few seats were already occupied. It was custom-made and worth about $30 million, although, of course, she didn't know that. Jade shook her head in astonishment and looked at Dario quizzically. Episode 208, The Flight to New York. Jade was stunned. She thought that Dario had been joking when he said he would organize their trip to New York and that they didn't need to book tickets, but she wasn't expecting a luxurious private jet. In fact, she had never even traveled on an ordinary plane before. She was speechless. Dario, this plane can't be yours, right? She eventually asked. His actions and money were becoming even more unfathomable. Surely he can't afford a private jet, she thought in bewilderment. If he can, exactly how wealthy is he? Oh my God, it's too scary to contemplate. It's not important who owns it. Sit back and enjoy the flight, Dario answered. Oh, Jade responded, not happy with his answer. Even if it didn't belong to him, he knew someone wealthy enough to own it. Just then, she recognized two other passengers, Caroline and Lucas. She was even more dumbfounded and confused than ever. Caroline was studying some documents intently. Jade got up and walked over to chat with her, but she only nodded at her and continued examining the documents. Lucas, who was sitting next to Caroline, said, "Hello, Miss Winslet." His poker face didn't give anything away, and he didn't say any more. She looked up at another passenger who had entered the cabin from the bar area. With his dazzling dyed yellow hair and bright smile, he was instantly recognizable. When he saw her, he walked toward her excitedly and took a sip of red wine from his glass. "It's our superstar. Come and sit. Can I pour you a glass of wine? You're getting prettier every time I see you. Look at that face and that figure." "Well, hello, David," she said, taking a step backward. She was a little overawed by his enthusiasm at seeing her and by his praise. She'd always found David intimidating, and she wished she could hide behind Dario. Oh, please, I can handle him, she thought. David wanted to keep praising Jade, but Dario gave him a warning look, so he immediately paused. Greetings, Miss Winslet. Welcome to the JD. I'm Billy, and I'll be looking after you on the flight, a young red-haired man said to her. Ah, the JD. What is the JD? Jade looked at him in surprise. She thought the way he had addressed her was strangely formal. That's Dario's nickname for me, she thought. JD is the name of this jet, David said. He was about to elaborate, but Dario gave him an icy glare and led Jade away to the bedroom. He closed the door behind them. The bedroom was huge and very luxurious. It had a full bathroom and was exquisitely appointed. Everything had been thought of. It even had a fridge. Many expensive oil paintings hung on the walls. She studied the paintings. They all portrayed beautiful naked women, and she felt awkward looking at them. A blush rose to her face. I've seen similar paintings at the villa. Surely Dario didn't choose this decor. Forget it, it's better not to ask, she thought. She was afraid he might misunderstand her question. There was no couch or chair in the room, so she sat down gingerly on the edge of the king-sized bed. She instantly regretted it. Her butt had hardly touched the bed when Dario leaned over and pushed her down, leaning over her. There was a familiar look of desire in his eyes. So you're impatient to get onto the bed, he commented. Do you want to continue what we started this morning? The corner of his mouth curled into a naughty grin. His voice was low and full of lust. Jade flushed more deeply. He had misunderstood her. Again. No, she retorted. New York is not very far away, so we'll have to be quick, Dario said, breathing heavily. But we can carry on at the hotel later. Jade flushed more deeply. He was starting to irritate her because he always had sex on his mind. I'm tired. I want to lie down until we land, she said firmly. I'm not interested. I just want to rest for a while. She was becoming angry and stood up from the bed. Dario took no notice of what she had said and took her in his arms, squeezing her tightly. So you really don't want to? He continued to press her, trying hard to seduce her with his deep, velvety voice. He put his lips to her ear, and her entire body started to tremble. Jade's ears were her weakness, and Dario knew it. She bit her lower lip and pretended to be indifferent to his words and touch. Then she pulled away and looked at him earnestly. No, she repeated, tapping his chest. Go away and let me rest, she added, somewhat angrily. But I want it, and you're my wife, so shouldn't you please me? He said. His voice was teasing but carried a hint of ambiguity. He continued to stare at her body hungrily. It had filled out a little since he had married her and was exquisite. He disliked skinny women. What does wanting it have to do with me? Solve it yourself, she blurted without thinking. Besides, didn't you say there wasn't enough time? Episode 209. Business in New York. As soon as the words were out of her mouth, Jade regretted having said them. She was wrong to speak to Dario like that. She saw Dario's look and knew she had pushed it too far. He had misunderstood her again and probably thought she was implying he was slow, which was why they didn't have enough time. Jade didn't want to talk to him anymore. She was afraid of what he might say, and so she wanted to leave the bedroom. If she stayed, she had no idea what might transpire. As she stood up to leave, Dario pulled her down again and said, Sit tight, we're about to take off. Suddenly the room was filled with soft, classical music. He lay down on the bed and pulled her down next to him. By the way, why are you going to New York City? Business? Jade asked him curiously. She felt things were not as simple as they appeared on the surface. Why would he be traveling without a good reason? He had said it was not just to accompany her, as he was going anyway. Moreover, Lucas and David were traveling with them. There was something Dario was not telling her. Yes, Dario answered abruptly, hugging her tightly. Oh, what is it about? Why do you need to attend to it personally? Jade asked, still trying to make sense of the situation. It's something very important, Dario responded. Jade was becoming depressed by the lack of communication. He avoided answering her and getting to the point, regardless of what she asked. Forget it. When he's ready, he'll give me answers and tell me what's going on, she thought despondently. Jade suddenly remembered what David had said. Why is this jet called Jadey? She covered her smile. She was waiting for a romantic answer because it was her nickname for her. It's just a coincidence, I imagine. I don't know why the owner called it that, he answered indifferently. His eyes twinkled mischievously, and the corners of his mouth lifted into an indulgent smile. I'm going to sleep, so don't bother me, Jade said in embarrassment. She shouldn't have asked. Wake me when we land. Jade awkwardly pulled the bed covers over her head and pretended to sleep. She was furious at herself. Why did I have to ask that? She scolded herself. The whole situation was extremely awkward. But who exactly named the jet Jadey? She wondered. He was deliberately trying to confuse her and lead her on. A smile flashed across Dario's face, and he patted her under the covers. Sleep well. I'll wake you when we arrive. He didn't want to tell her the truth yet because he feared she couldn't handle it. Dario had bought her the jet to make it easier for her to travel. It belonged to her, which was why he had named it Jadey. In the future, she would become busier and busier as she became more sought after and famous. She would have to fly to locations all over the world. He wanted to ensure her safety, and especially didn't want her to become entangled with fans. Jade eventually fell asleep and was woken by a sloppy kiss. Still half asleep, she felt someone's tongue in her mouth. Then, she felt a hand on her breast and sat up abruptly. She glared at Dario crossly. You're impossible. What are you doing? She said, pulling her lips into a grimace. Dario looked at her innocently and said, We're almost there. You said to wake you. Not like this. Jade was so angry that she could hardly get the words out. He was shameless. You're impossible. She made herself a promise that she wouldn't ever ask him to wake her up again. Sorry, he said, raising his arms in feigned surrender. I don't know any other way. I'll try harder next time, he added cheekily. Forget it, Jade retorted. They embarked 5 minutes later, and a waiting chauffeur-driven limousine took them to their hotel. The hotel, like the jet, was luxurious. It was a grand Mediterranean-style building with a shimmering white exterior and manicured gardens. Inside, the decor was from around Europe, French bronze statues, Italian music fountains, and French crystal chandeliers. Jade looked around her, trying to take it all in. Dario, did you book this hotel? She asked hesitantly. The cosmetic company you've come to see booked this hotel for you. It had nothing to do with me, he said, shrugging innocently. I'm freeloading in your room. It saved me a lot of money. Jade nodded at him shyly. She was relieved that after all she had said to him on the jet, he still wanted to sleep in the same room as her that night. She wasn't concerned about the cost of the hotel if the cosmetics company was paying. She was sure they could afford it. This hotel was much better than the small one she'd stayed at while filming The Decadent Lady. Dario helped her book into the hotel and carried their overnight bags to the room. He left with David and Lucas, saying that he would see her later. Jade wasn't concerned because she would be leaving shortly. After unpacking her bag, Caroline arrived at her room to explain the day's proceedings. On the other hand, Dario strode purposefully out of the hotel and towards the waiting Lamborghini. He and David got into the car. They were going to the city's most famous villa, the White Cloud Villa. It was a place to which most people never got invited. Episode 210, Homecoming. The villa was well hidden. If someone didn't know it was there, they would never have found it. Lush trees lined the small road. The branches joined overhead, forming a tunnel that sheltered the road from the hot summer sun. The villa looked like a palace. As soon as the car came to a stop, a man dressed as a butler came forward to welcome them. David was sitting next to Dario. Before anyone could open the door for him, he jumped out and rushed to open Dario's door. He bowed respectfully and said with a mocking smile, Welcome home, Mr. Foster. As he spoke, he reached out his hand to help Dario from the car. His friend glanced at him sharply. David immediately pulled back his hand and stepped away. Dario straightened his tie and emerged from the car elegantly. His handsome face was composed. His cold, proud eyes stared straight ahead. His demeanor made him seem unapproachable, yet he somehow made people yearn to be in his presence. When the women of the household staff saw him, they began chattering excitedly. Oh wow, it's him! It's Mr. Foster! Oh my God, he's so handsome I could die! We're so lucky to work here, but he's been gone for so long. I wonder how long he'll be staying this time. When the other servants saw Dario, they burst into action to prepare for the new arrivals. Why didn't you tell us you were returning? Richard, the butler, asked with surprise. He'd served the foster family for decades and had watched Dario grow up. Then he glanced at David.
"Well, if it isn't young Mr. Swan, what brings you here today?"
"Ah, hello, Richard." David greeted the butler fondly.
"We came back to see Dario's grandfather. Hey, why are you running around doing everything yourself? At your age, you should relax and let the younger staff take care of things. It's good to see you."
He was very familiar with everyone in the foster household. Meanwhile, Dario said nothing. He just looked around the house nostalgically as they entered. David glanced to the foyer and saw only a few servants. He asked tentatively,
"Richard, are Mr. and Mrs. Foster not home?" "They're with your grandfather right now in his room,"
Richard said as he looked at Dario worriedly. He continued sadly,
"It's good that you're back. I don't know if you've heard, but your grandfather's illness has become much worse in the last few days."
Seeing the butler's worried face, Dario frowned. If my sister hadn't told me about this a few days ago, how long would my parents and the servants have kept it from me? He wondered.
"But his health has always been so good. What happened?"
David asked anxiously. He'd been a friend of the family for so long that he was as concerned as any of them.
"Actually, it seems he's had this issue since he was young. It's just that he's kept it well hidden all these years, but now it's become so bad,"
the butler explained with a pained look.
"Take us to him,"
Dario commanded, showing concern for the first time since they had arrived. When they had been talking, some of the maids had gathered outside the door to gaze at Dario and murmur about his good looks. When Richard noticed, his expression hardened as he turned to them and said coldly,
"Don't you have work to do?"
They scattered quickly. The third-room floor where his grandfather was staying was elaborately decorated and in a relatively quiet part of the house. When they entered, Dario's grandfather was lying on a hospital bed. He looked haggard and weak. Standing close to him was a beautiful woman who closely resembled Dario. Her face was filled with sorrow. It was his older sister, Diane. She looked up at them with surprise.
"Dario, you're back. I'm so glad," she told him.
Their parents, Donald and Sharon, stood in the back of the room. Although they were also surprised to see him, they didn't show it. They said nothing to him. When his grandfather saw Dario walk in, a look of joy flashed across his face. But as soon as Dario approached, he began to curse at him.
"You little bastard, you haven't been home in months, and you decide to come back now. Why even bother? Why not just stay away forever?"
Dario withstood the tongue lashing patiently. His eyes were filled with a tenderness he rarely showed, and he smiled consolingly. He said softly,
"Grandpa, don't get excited. How could I not come home when I heard how sick you were?"
His grandfather, Walter Foster, looked at him coldly, dissatisfied with the answer. However, his old eyes also betrayed his affection for his grandson. He stubbornly turned his head away and spoke in the direction of the wall.
"You traitor, you stayed away for months, not even a quick visit or phone call. You don't bother to come back until I'm on my deathbed. You're no grandson of mine. Get this imposter out of my house," he demanded.
Richard, however, had no intention of following his orders. He risked the old man's wrath by pleading,
"Sir, please stop. When Mr. Dario wasn't home, you said how much you missed him every day. Now that he is home, you say that you want him to leave. If he really does leave, you'll regret it."
Episode 211, Like Father, Like Son.
"Richard, how dare you speak to me that way? Is this whole house turning against me as I die?"
Walter sputtered angrily. His breathing became ragged, and Richard's expression changed quickly from frustration to worry as he offered a glass of water to the old man. Dario smiled calmly and took over. In an unconcerned tone, he said,
"Don't worry, grandfather. At this point, even the Grim Reaper is afraid of you. He wouldn't dare to take you out. Donald, look at your son. He's even more arrogant than you. You both seem to exist only to make my life miserable,"
Walter said angrily as he glared at his son. Arrogance seemed to be handed down from one foster to the next.
"Do you hear yourself? Who do you think we learned it from?"
said Dario's father sarcastically. At 48, Donald Foster was even more handsome than Dario. He looked and dressed like a man 20 years younger. It was as if he had aged backward. He was still tall, dark, and handsome. Despite his cold eyes, he could be charming and sexy. Most younger men didn't like to associate with him because he made them feel inferior, and he spurned the company of men his own age. Since his 20s, women had always been drawn to him. As he aged, he seemed to attract them even more. Apparently, the wisdom of age made him appealing to women of all ages. Yet no matter how much the women pursued him, he remained cold and aloof. He loved only one woman, his wife Sharon. Perhaps that was why Dario was so particular about women.
I think that's the pot calling the kettle black,
Dario's mother commented. In her time, she'd been considered one of the most beautiful women in the city. As she had aged, she'd become even more striking. Her clear blue eyes were as bright as stars. Her noble face radiated elegance. She wore a tight red dress, which enhanced her seductive figure. Just 2 years younger than her husband, she looked more like an older sister of Dario than his mother. When she went out with Dario, people often mistook them for siblings.
Darling, Dario's been gone for so long. Let's leave these two alone to catch up,
Donald suggested quietly to his wife. As he spoke, he gently took her hand. They'd been married for decades and their relationship seemed to only improve. They still took romantic trips to Paris and Italy. Sharon nodded and then turned to Dario and said soothingly,
Dario, don't listen to your grandfather's words. In his heart, I know he's missed you. Stay and talk with him.
Walter sputtered with anger. He didn't know who he was more irritated with, his butler or his daughter-in-law. How dare they tell him whether or not he had missed his grandson? Grandpa, I've got to get back to work. I'll leave you in the hands of my not-so-perfect brother, Diane said with a smile as she patted Dario's shoulder good-naturedly. When they had all left, Dario looked at his formerly high-spirited grandfather. He was lying on the bed like a helpless child. His face was pale, and his eyes were grey with cataracts. He was no longer the bright and energetic man he remembered. Dario grimaced with worry as he recalled what Richard had told him earlier. He had said that his grandfather hadn't eaten a good meal in a long time, and he hadn't eaten anything at all during the past few days. His only nutrition was from the IV that hung beside his bed. After staring at Walter for a while, he sighed helplessly and covered him with the blanket. Then he asked sadly, "What's wrong? Why don't you want to eat? Don't you want to live to meet the next generation?" Walter couldn't help but glance at him when he heard this. There was a hint of curiosity in his eyes, but he pretended not to care.
What next generation? All your sister does is work all day. What kind of woman is more interested in work than a family? It's not like she needs to work. She's never going to find a man to marry her. And you're already 30. Even you can't manage to find a woman to marry. The family name will never continue at this rate,
he ranted, and then sighed heavily. His old eyes were filled with helplessness and sorrow. After a long time, he finally asked with difficulty,
"Just tell me, since I'm halfway in the grave and don't know how much longer I have to live, will I meet a grandson before I meet the Grim Reaper?"
Episode 212. Dario's Marriage?
"Dario,"
Walter began, but was interrupted by a coughing fit.
"I have achieved much in my life, but now I only have one wish. That is to see you get married and have children. Otherwise, I'll leave this world with regret."
He was simply trying to explain that he didn't think he had much time left. As Dario listened to his grandfather, his eyes flashed with pain and his heart hurt. His grandfather had watched him grow up, and he was probably the only person who loved Dario the most in the world. He had taught him how to become successful in business. He had been more than just a grandfather. He had also been a benefactor and a teacher. So it was difficult for Dario to see his grandfather, who had always been his strength, lying helplessly in bed. The man who had once dominated the business world was no longer there. Now, he was only an old man who just wanted to see his precious grandson keep the family legacy alive. How could he deny an old man's final wish? It was so hard to know what to tell him. Dario stared intently at Walter's forlorn expression and felt awkward. "Grandpa, don't worry. You'll have a chance to see your great-grandson," Dario promised, as he patted the old man's hand firmly. But Walter's eyes were full of distrust and regret. He had one grandson and one granddaughter. Neither had married, and they weren't young anymore. He sighed helplessly.
I don't know if I'll see either of you having a family in my lifetime. I'm afraid I can't wait much longer. Don't let me die with regret, he said.
As he spoke, his voice began to fade. In the end, it was barely a sigh. Then he seemed to have fallen asleep. His eyes were tightly shut. Dario covered him with the blanket, his face filled with distress. Should he have told him about the wedding? Perhaps he should let him meet Jade. She was his granddaughter-in-law after all. Then he could die with hope. He continued to sit by the bed and watch his grandfather sleep. Later in the afternoon, a maid came to the door and quietly said, "Excuse me, Mr. Dario?" He stood up and went to the door. Quietly closing it behind him, he asked,
"Is something wrong?"
When the maid heard Dario's deep, sexy voice, she nearly fainted. She began to blush as she said shyly, Your parents are asking for you. They're in the study." She couldn't look at him directly, afraid she would fall apart. She hadn't even believed that she would be capable of speaking to him. She knew that now she would be the envy of all the girls in the house. "I'm on my way," he said, and walked toward the study. As soon as he entered, his mother rushed up and hugged him tightly, saying, "Oh, I've missed you so much. Did you miss me? You look so good, though. Wow, look at those muscles. So fit. I think you're more handsome than your father now. You've been gone for months. How could you do that to me?" As she spoke, she grabbed his hand and ran her hand over his muscular arm and chest. Dario felt someone staring at him. He turned around and saw his father's handsome face looking at him with anger and jealousy. He took a step back from his mother and said coolly, "Mum, you need to control yourself. You're making someone jealous." Sharon turned and glanced at Donald. She shrugged indifferently and continued to fawn over Dario. "Well, what kind of father gets jealous of his own son?" she asked. "Sharon, he's not a 3-year-old, he's 30. You can't touch him like that. No wonder he can't find a girlfriend," Donald said, chiding her. "That has nothing to do with me," she asserted. But Donald knew that every time she and Dario went out, they were always touching or had their arms around each other. Since she looked so young, people often thought they were lovers. That frustrated him. He didn't like the idea of his wife touching any other man like that, not even their own son. "All right, enough. Come sit down. Let's get down to business." Donald patted the place next to him on the sofa. Sharon ignored him and continued to focus on her son. But his words drained the joy from her face. She took a deep breath and gave her son a serious look. "Dario, I know that you still have no desire to get married," she said, "but you're not getting any younger. While I never want to force you to do something you don't want to, I do hope you'll consider starting a family soon. How can we let Walt—" Her voice caught, and she couldn't finish her sentence. Ever since she had married into the family, Walter had always been kind to her and treated her like a true daughter. Seeing him so ill was breaking her heart. Dario knew what she was about to say. "So you want me to get married as soon as possible, and the person you want me to marry is Evelyn," he said flatly. Although they had said nothing, he knew what they were thinking. Since his cousin Evelyn was not his uncle's biological daughter, his parents had long been thinking the two of them could marry. It would be a marriage that could benefit both families. Sharon mistakenly thought that Dario's words meant he had agreed to the idea. She smiled happily and nodded her head. She said excitedly, "You know your father and I both like her very much, and Evelyn has always liked you. She's so sweet and gentle, and she's been waiting 20 years. Episode 213. No Regrets. "Well, she can wait another 20 years for me," Dario said, interrupting his mother. "I don't love her, and you both know that. Even if I wanted to get married, it would be to someone I actually love, not her." As he spoke, he looked at his father pointedly. He knew that his father probably wouldn't want him to marry someone he didn't love. His father was a person who valued love in a marriage. Dario believed that if he held firm, his father wouldn't force him to marry a woman he did not love, not even Evelyn, whom he thought of more as a little sister than a wife. Donald didn't say anything, but he gave a slight nod. His gaze told Dario that he understood and didn't want to force him. But Walter's dying wish was to see his grandson get married and have children, and he didn't want to disappoint his father either. The doctor had said that the old man didn't have much time left. He wished he could trade his life for his father's, and he wished his son would find a woman he could love soon, so both his father and son would be happy. He didn't care who the woman was. If Dario loved her, that would be enough. He wasn't concerned about a match between two families. He wanted to be fair and open-minded. If the girl was kind and good, that would be enough. However, when Sharon heard her son's words, she frowned. Looking at her husband, she realized he was not on her side regarding Evelyn, but she liked her so much. She already thought of her as a daughter. Evelyn had understood how much she missed Dario while he was gone, and so she had accompanied Sharon on shopping trips and restaurant visits. She had been so good to her and had tried to take care of her every need, and Evelyn really liked Dario. It could be a perfect match for all of them. So, Sharon decided she had to push her own agenda. She asked, "Son, don't you have any feelings for Evelyn at all? She's been in love with you since you were children." But Dario was very decisive. "Well, she can keep waiting. I'm not going to fall in love with her, ever," he reiterated. "Well, then what do you think about the Webster's daughter? She's nice," his mother offered. The Websters were friends. She had a good relationship with them. If they became in-laws, it could work. "Not much," he answered. Sharon smiled awkwardly and turned to Donald. She wanted him to try. Nothing she had said had seemed to work. Donald spread his hands helplessly. After so many years, they could practically read each other's minds. Sharon stood up unhappily and started to leave. "Where are you going?" asked Donald, looking at her forlornly. He disliked it when they were apart. Who would have thought that such a successful man who dealt with business matters so ferociously would be so dependent on his wife? Sharon patted his hand and said, "I'm just going to make dinner for you guys. It's rare for Dario to be home. I thought he might like a home-cooked meal." "You're spoiling him. I never get this kind of special treatment," her husband complained. "Stop it. I'm going to the store. You stay and enjoy talking with your son. We need to take advantage of the time he is here," she instructed as she grabbed her purse. Before she left, Donald smiled and kissed her sweetly. Once she had left, his expression turned serious. He turned back to Dario and asked, "Son, are you really not interested in Evelyn? Your mother likes her so much. It would make her very happy." He was torn between his wife's happiness and his son's. Dario's face was stern. "No matter how much she wants it, I won't marry Evelyn. No one can make me," he said. After sitting in silence for a while, Donald sighed helplessly and accepted reality. "Of course, you have to turn out like me, dedicated to love over practicality," he grumbled. Then he looked at his son warily. Something felt awkward. He suddenly said, "Son, tell me the truth. Do you love someone else?" Dario hadn't been intending to mislead them in the first place, so when he was asked directly, he nodded. Donald knew his son well and realized that he had made his choice, so he didn't ask any more questions. If he had a lover, then surely marriage would only be a matter of time. Although he didn't want to pressure him, with Walter on his deathbed, it would be best if the marriage happened quickly. "Dario, you've seen your grandfather's condition. Don't let him down," he pleaded. When he mentioned Walter's name, his eyes filled with pain. He sighed heavily and left the room. It was quiet in the study. Dario was left sitting alone on the sofa. He narrowed his eyes and kept thinking about his grandfather. Don't let him down, he thought. So, what should he do? David hadn't followed them to the study. He'd been hanging out in the kitchen, bored and hoping to find a maid to flirt with. Although he wasn't as handsome as Dario, he was still very attractive. His easygoing nature made him popular with all the women in the house. No matter how much Richard glared at them and huffed, all the girls flirted with David. Then David's gaze was drawn to the beautiful woman walking down the stairs. He immediately walked away from the girls in the kitchen. He went up to greet Sharon enthusiastically. "Wow, Mrs. Foster, you get more beautiful every day. And you're looking so fit. Look at how your skin glows. You must tell me how to do it so I can tell my mother." Sharon burst into laughter at David's fawning. She looked at him warily and said with a smile, "Oh, my dear, you do love to joke, but don't be so formal. You can call me Mum." Episode 214. The Interrogation. David's words had made Sharon's heart melt. Their families had been friends for years, and Dario and David were like brothers. Sharon thought of David as a son. Tis, how can I call you Mum when you look like you do? I think I should call you Big Sister instead." David responded coyly. Sharon then started to question him.
David, you and Dario are best friends. Do you know if he has a girlfriend? Or can you at least tell me if there are any girls he likes? She pleaded.
David's heart skipped a beat. How could he tell her that Dario was already married? He looked around to make sure Dario was nowhere in sight. Then he whispered,
There should be girls, right? I'm not sure what's going on with him.
Hoping to change the subject, he then asked,
So, are you on your way to the kitchen? Your baked chicken is the best, so much better than my mum's. I was hoping for a taste of your cooking today.
You're so sweet, David. Don't worry. I'm making all your favorites, Sharon said as she headed toward the kitchen. Since her son hadn't been around much, she hadn't been in the mood to cook for a long time. She hoped she hadn't lost her touch. Watching her try to juggle everything, David decided to at least help her by cutting up some vegetables. Sharon resolved to try again. She asked,
So, what kind of girl do you think he would like?
As Dario's mother, she thought she would know what he desired in a woman. But then again, she had thought that he liked Evelyn. She hadn't expected him to tell her so decisively that he was not interested in her. What should she do? She had no idea what kind of girl she should find for him.
Actually, it's the women who chase after Dario,
David explained.
But he never seems to like any of them, and he's always so aloof. I think he scares them away.
David kept looking around guiltily as he spoke. He was afraid that Dario would suddenly appear behind him. Sharon continued to question him worriedly.
What? He doesn't like any of them? Why is he so picky? Does he even know what he actually wants? If not, he may never find a wife. But what can we do? He probably inherited the coldness he shows from his father.
Sharon did not trust her son. He was an intelligent young man who had built his own company. She wasn't afraid he couldn't find a wife if he wanted one. She was more afraid that he would deny himself one. In that case, no matter how perfect a girl was, it wouldn't matter. David thought carefully before he responded.
I think he likes kindness and innocence. He wants a girl who is still a little silly, someone who is not greedy and cares about others. I think that about sums it up.
Isn't that what Jade is like? David thought. He thought the key was the silliness. Dario needed someone who kept things interesting and was different from him. She brought out his more playful side. The more David got to know Jade, the more he realized he never knew what to expect from her. Kindness, innocence, and a little silly. Doesn't that describe Evelyn? Sharon thought. Then she said happily,
So, David, don't you think that describes Evelyn? What, Evelyn? No, I'm not talking about her,
David said anxiously. Why would she suddenly be talking about her?
Who else could it be?
Sharon looked at him sharply.
No one, forget it. Honestly, I don't know what he likes. Like you said, his mind is so hard to read, right? Even though we're friends, I can't ever tell what he's thinking. Oh, hey, I haven't gone up to see his grandfather yet. I think I'll go up and see how he's doing,
David declared, wiping the sweat from his brow and running upstairs. He was afraid that if Sharon continued to interrogate him, he would tell her something that he shouldn't. Since Dario's parents didn't know about his marriage, it meant that he didn't plan to let them know, so David didn't want to meddle. If he gave anything away, Dario would kill him. He wasn't stupid. It was better to let Dario deal with these questions. But he also knew Sharon wasn't someone to be trifled with. Watching her handle her husband meant even the toughest man couldn't stop her from getting what she wanted. She was no ordinary woman. Therefore, the smartest thing for him to do was to get out of the way. Jade left the hotel and followed Caroline to the Adele Barraque offices. Adele Barraque was the world's top cosmetic brand. It had branches all over the world, and this was one of them. Caroline had introduced her to Adele Barraque's latest product, Phantom Mascara. While they were at the hotel, Caroline had given her all the information about the company, so she basically understood the company's main products and pricing structure. Jade had not expected that she would be asked to endorse such an expensive brand. She was nervous and worried that she would mess it up. She was considered an experienced actress, even though she had just played minor roles for many years. But in this circle, she was just a novice. She looked at all the celebrities who had endorsed this brand in the past. Many of them were well known. These famous names included Miss Monica. Once Jade had discovered that, she had become even more flustered. She didn't know if she could do the brand justice and didn't want to let Caroline or the Milliken agency down. The audience they were marketing to was also considered high-end. They were not products that ordinary people could afford. She was most concerned with not being able to reflect the uniqueness of the brand. The consumers were probably all rich socialites. She feared that one misstep might ruin her future. In this case, a poor performance could mean the sales of the product would plummet. While similar things did happen in the entertainment industry, it was usually because of a scandal caused by that celebrity, not a bad performance. On the other hand, if it was a successful shoot, it could indeed increase her value 100%. But that could also bring trouble. Sometimes celebrities endorsed products that didn't meet expectations. Then the good reputation of both the product and the celebrity was lost. But Adele Barracu was a classic brand. The company had been around for over 100 years, so Jade wasn't worried about a faulty product. She also had faith in Caroline's judgment. She wouldn't recommend a job that would harm Jade's future. Jade was simply worried that she might not be able to handle the job. After all, it was Episode 213. No regrets. Well, she can wait another 20 years for me, Dario said, interrupting his mother. I don't love her, and you both know that. Even if I wanted to get married, it would be to someone I actually love, not her. As he spoke, he looked at his father pointedly. He knew that his father probably wouldn't want him to marry someone he didn't love. His father was a person who valued love in a marriage. Dario believed that if he held firm, his father wouldn't force him to marry a woman he did not love, not even Evelyn, whom he thought of more as a little sister than a wife. Donald didn't say anything, but he gave a slight nod. His gaze told Dario that he understood and didn't want to force him. But Walter's dying wish was to see his grandson get married and have children, and he didn't want to disappoint his father either. The doctor had said that the old man didn't have much time left. He wished he could trade his life for his father's, and he wished his son would find a woman he could love soon, so both his father and son would be happy. He didn't care who the woman was. If Dario loved her, that would be enough. He wasn't concerned about a match between two families. He wanted to be fair and open-minded. If the girl was kind and good, that would be enough. However, when Sharon heard her son's words, she frowned. Looking at her husband, she realized he was not on her side regarding Evelyn, but she liked her so much. She already thought of her as a daughter. Evelyn had understood how much she missed Dario while he was gone, and so she had accompanied Sharon on shopping trips and restaurant visits. She had been so good to her and had tried to take care of her every need, and Evelyn really liked Dario. It could be a perfect match for all of them. So, Sharon decided she had to push her own agenda. She asked, Son, don't you have any feelings for Evelyn at all? She's been in love with you since you were children. But Dario was very decisive. Well, she can keep waiting. I'm not going to fall in love with her, ever, he reiterated. Well, then what do you think about the Webster's daughter? She's nice, his mother offered. The Websters were friends. She had a good relationship with them. If they became in-laws, it could work. Not much, he answered. Sharon smiled awkwardly and turned to Donald. She wanted him to try. Nothing she had said had seemed to work. Donald spread his hands helplessly. After so many years, they could practically read each other's minds. Sharon stood up unhappily and started to leave. Where are you going? Asked Donald, looking at her forlornly. He disliked it when they were apart. Who would have thought that such a successful man who dealt with business matters so ferociously would be so dependent on his wife? Sharon patted his hand and said, I'm just going to make dinner for you guys. It's rare for Dario to be home. I thought he might like a home-cooked meal. You're spoiling him. I never get this kind of special treatment, her husband complained. Stop it. I'm going to the store. You stay and enjoy talking with your son. We need to take advantage of the time he is here, she instructed as she grabbed her purse. Before she left, Donald smiled and kissed her sweetly. Once she had left, his expression turned serious. He turned back to Dario and asked, Son, are you really not interested in Evelyn? Your mother likes her so much, it would make her very happy. He was torn between his wife's happiness and his son's. Dario's face was stern. No matter how much she wants it, I won't marry Evelyn. No one can make me, he said. After sitting in silence for a while, Donald sighed helplessly and accepted reality. Of course, you have to turn out like me, dedicated to love over practicality, he grumbled. Then he looked at his son warily. Something felt awkward. He suddenly said, Son, tell me the truth. Do you love someone else? Dario hadn't been intending to mislead them in the first place, so when he was asked directly, he nodded. Donald knew his son well and realized that he had made his choice, so he didn't ask any more questions. If he had a lover, then surely marriage would only be a matter of time. Although he didn't want to pressure him, with Walter on his deathbed, it would be best if the marriage happened quickly.
Dario, you've seen your grandfather's condition. Don't let him down,
he pleaded. When he mentioned Walter's name, his eyes filled with pain. He sighed heavily and left the room. It was quiet in the study. Dario was left sitting alone on the sofa. He narrowed his eyes and kept thinking about his grandfather. Don't let him down, he thought. So, what should he do? David hadn't followed them to the study. He'd been hanging out in the kitchen, bored and hoping to find a maid to flirt with. Although he wasn't as handsome as Dario, he was still very attractive. His easygoing nature made him popular with all the women in the house. No matter how much Richard glared at them and huffed, all the girls flirted with David. Then David's gaze was drawn to the beautiful woman walking down the stairs. He immediately walked away from the girls in the kitchen. He went up to greet Sharon enthusiastically. Wow, Mrs. Foster, you get more beautiful every day. And you're looking so fit. Look at how your skin glows. You must tell me how to do it so I can tell my mother. Sharon burst into laughter at David's fawning. She looked at him warily and said with a smile, Oh, my dear, you do love to joke, but don't be so formal. You can call me Mum. Episode 214. The Interrogation. David's words had made Sharon's heart melt. Their families had been friends for years, and Dario and David were like brothers. Sharon thought of David as a son. Tis, how can I call you Mum when you look like you do? I think I should call you Big Sister instead. David responded coyly. Sharon then started to question him. David, you and Dario are best friends. Do you know if he has a girlfriend? Or can you at least tell me if there are any girls he likes? She pleaded. David's heart skipped a beat. How could he tell her that Dario was already married? He looked around to make sure Dario was nowhere in sight. Then he whispered, There should be girls, right? I'm not sure what's going on with him. Hoping to change the subject, he then asked, So, are you on your way to the kitchen? Your baked chicken is the best, so much better than my mum's. I was hoping for a taste of your cooking today. You're so sweet, David. Don't worry. I'm making all your favourites, Sharon said as she headed toward the kitchen. Since her son hadn't been around much, she hadn't been in the mood to cook for a long time. She hoped she hadn't lost her touch. Watching her try to juggle everything, David decided to at least help her by cutting up some vegetables. Sharon resolved to try again. She asked, So, what kind of girl do you think he would like? As Dario's mother, she thought she would know what he desired in a woman. But then again, she had thought that he liked Evelyn. She hadn't expected him to tell her so decisively that he was not interested in her. What should she do? She had no idea what kind of girl she should find for him. Actually, it's the women who chase after Dario, David explained. But he never seems to like any of them, and he's always so aloof. I think he scares them away. David kept looking around guiltily as he spoke. He was afraid that Dario would suddenly appear behind him. Sharon continued to question him worriedly. What? He doesn't like any of them? Why is he so picky? Does he even know what he actually wants? If not, he may never find a wife. But what can we do? He probably inherited the coldness he shows from his father. Sharon did not trust her son. He was an intelligent young man who had built his own company. She wasn't afraid he couldn't find a wife if he wanted one. She was more afraid that he would deny himself one. In that case, no matter how perfect a girl was, it wouldn't matter. David thought carefully before he responded. I think he likes kindness and innocence. He wants a girl who is still a little silly, someone who is not greedy and cares about others. I think that about sums it up. Isn't that what Jade is like? David thought. He thought the key was the silliness. Dario needed someone who kept things interesting and was different from him. She brought out his more playful side. The more David got to know Jade, the more he realized he never knew what to expect from her. Kindness, innocence, and a little silly. Doesn't that describe Evelyn? Sharon thought. Then she said happily, So, David, don't you think that describes Evelyn? What, Evelyn? No, I'm not talking about her, David said anxiously. Why would she suddenly be talking about her? Who else could it be? Sharon looked at him sharply. No one, forget it. Honestly, I don't know what he likes. Like you said, his mind is so hard to read, right?
Even though we're friends, I can't ever tell what he's thinking. Oh, hey, I haven't gone up to see his grandfather yet. I think I'll go up and see how he's doing," David declared, wiping the sweat from his brow and running upstairs. He was afraid that if Sharon continued to interrogate him, he would tell her something that he shouldn't. Since Dario's parents didn't know about his marriage, it meant that he didn't plan to let them know, so David didn't want to meddle. If he gave anything away, Dario would kill him. He wasn't stupid. It was better to let Dario deal with these questions. But he also knew Sharon wasn't someone to be trifled with. Watching her handle her husband meant even the toughest man couldn't stop her from getting what she wanted. She was no ordinary woman. Therefore, the smartest thing for him to do was to get out of the way. Jade left the hotel and followed Caroline to the Adele Barraque offices. Adele Barraque was the world's top cosmetic brand. It had branches all over the world, and this was one of them. Caroline had introduced her to Adele Barraque's latest product, Phantom Mascara. While they were at the hotel, Caroline had given her all the information about the company, so she basically understood the company's main products and pricing structure. Jade had not expected that she would be asked to endorse such an expensive brand. She was nervous and worried that she would mess it up. She was considered an experienced actress, even though she had just played minor roles for many years. But in this circle, she was just a novice. She looked at all the celebrities who had endorsed this brand in the past. Many of them were well known. These famous names included Miss Monica. Once Jade had discovered that, she had become even more flustered. She didn't know if she could do the brand justice and didn't want to let Caroline or the Milliken agency down. The audience they were marketing to was also considered high-end. They were not products that ordinary people could afford. She was most concerned with not being able to reflect the uniqueness of the brand. The consumers were probably all rich socialites. She feared that one misstep might ruin her future. In this case, a poor performance could mean the sales of the product would plummet. While similar things did happen in the entertainment industry, it was usually because of a scandal caused by that celebrity, not a bad performance. On the other hand, if it was a successful shoot, it could indeed increase her value 100%. But that could also bring trouble. Sometimes celebrities endorsed products that didn't meet expectations. Then the good reputation of both the product and the celebrity was lost. But Adele Barraque was a classic brand. The company had been around for over 100 years, so Jade wasn't worried about a faulty product. She also had faith in Caroline's judgment. She wouldn't recommend a job that would harm Jade's future. Jade was simply worried that she might not be able to handle the job. After all, it wasn't her world. She'd never even used such high-end products. She didn't understand them or their consumers, so she was rightfully nervous. She desperately wanted to talk to Dario about it, but she was afraid that she would disturb his work. So when her phone rang and she saw his number, her heart warmed and she smiled with relief. Episode 215. Save Yourself. Hey Dario, what's going on? Jade had intended to play it cool when she answered the phone, but she couldn't control her excitement and blurted out her question before he could even say hello. It had only been a few hours since they had last seen each other, but it felt like it had been days to Jade. Save yourself, Dario said. Jade was confused. What? She asked cautiously. Save myself? From what? I'm afraid you'll miss me to death. That's why I called, to save you. Dario teased. Well, that's a bit narcissistic, she thought. Actually, I think you might be the one in danger of dying, she retorted. You're assuming I miss you so much, but please note that you're the one calling me. So apparently, you miss me even more. She was quickly learning how to communicate with him. It was mostly a matter of one-upmanship. Dario smiled when he heard her. Oh, you're turning into quite the smart aleck. What are we going to do about that? He said. He realized it might be a challenge to keep up with her wit. I learned it all from you, she said. She felt her body radiate with happiness. When she saw that they had almost arrived at their destination, she hurriedly said, Right, so did you accomplish your goal with this call? I want to hang up. I'm not sure. Let's see if you can hang up, he said gently. She was ready to end the call, but then asked nervously, So, are you planning to stay here after work or go back to Washington? Do you want me to go back? He answered her question with another question. Jade grinned and said, I guess we'll see. With that, Dario ended the call.
He absolutely intended to stay there with her. David was headed up to the second floor of the Fosters' villa when he felt someone watching him. He turned his head and found Dario staring at him intently. He thought maybe he'd been overheard in the kitchen. He gave a panicked laugh and joked, "Hey there, Mr. Foster. Fancy meeting you here." Dario glanced at him coolly. Seeing David's guilty look, he assumed his friend had done something wrong, but he didn't have time to interrogate him. He tossed David the keys to the Rolls-Royce and said, "You have 10 minutes to get to the Adele Bar Q headquarters and deliver this box for Jade." What? You want me to deliver something? What do you think I am, your delivery boy? Where's Lucas? David protested. Why would Dario ask him to deliver something instead of his assistant? He has other things to do. Now, you have 9 minutes, Dario stated as he looked at his watch. David took a deep breath to control his irritation. Looking at Dario's unreadable expression, he took the keys and rushed down the stairs, calling, "I'll be right back. You'd better save me some dinner." Jade hadn't expected the special treatment that working with the Adele Bar Q Cosmetics Company would bring. Not only had there been a car to pick them up, but when they arrived, a special escort was waiting at the door to welcome them. It was certainly a 5-star treatment. Jade was flattered, but it also made her more nervous. This company was so professional. What if the shoot went poorly? But then she thought of Dario, and her heart began to calm down a little. He was working so hard to earn money for them, so she too was willing to work hard to help their little family. Their escort was the assistant to the president of the Adele Bar Q branch. She was a capable woman in her early 20s. She dressed and acted very professionally, and Jade was a little intimidated. "Miss Winslet, Miss McCoy, welcome. Please come with me. I'm Miss Jones, assistant to the president," she told them. She had a lovely smile and pleasing voice that helped them relax and feel welcome. Dang, she's good, thought Jade. "Hello," Jade said faintly. Miss Jones was equally impressed with Jade. She was so lovely and seemed kind, unlike most of the people who came through their office. Despite her stunning beauty, she acted like a regular person. "You are everything our president said and more. No wonder she wants you to represent her company," the assistant said, and then she realized she was babbling. "You're joking, right?" Jade said, somewhat embarrassed. Miss Jones then took them to the VIP elevator, and then they entered a well-appointed meeting room. She asked Jade, "Miss Winslet, do you prefer coffee or tea?" "Oh, just water would be fine," Jade answered shyly. She was not used to such special attention. "Water it is," the assistant said with a smile. "How about you, Miss McCoy?" "A cup of coffee would be lovely, thank you," Caroline answered. Miss Jones brought an ice water and a coffee and placed them on the table. "Thank you so much," Jade said. "I hate to be a bother." The assistant's kindness had given her an even deeper appreciation of the company. "Don't be silly, it's my pleasure. The president is on her way, but I'm afraid you'll have to wait a bit longer." "That's fine," Jade told her. "By the way, what did you mean when you said that your boss wanted me to represent the company?" Maybe Caroline wasn't the one who arranged the endorsement contract, she thought. "You don't know. My boss specifically requested that you be the new spokesperson," Miss Jones explained. Jade's heart skipped a beat. What was going on? Why would the president of Adele Bar Q personally choose her as the new spokesperson? She had no experience in this industry. How did they even know she existed? Episode 216. Have we met? Just then, a tall, elegant-looking woman entered the room. Her dark hair was pulled up in a bun, and she was impeccably dressed. Something about her was oddly familiar, but Jade couldn't say what it was. "President Foster, you're here," Miss Jones said, and went to the door to welcome her. Jade was stunned to see that the person in charge of the Adele Bar Q branch was a woman. And what a coincidence that she has the same last name as Dario, she thought. "All right, Miss Jones, let's get down to business. Can you please bring us the contract?" Diane began giving orders as soon as she came in. "Miss Foster?" Caroline greeted Diane as she walked toward her. Jade followed. Diane's eyes softened a little as she said, "Oh, Miss McCoy, I've heard so much about you." Then she turned her gaze to Jade and looked her over carefully. She smiled with satisfaction and said, "You're even more lovely in person." Jade was still trying to figure out where she might have seen the president before. She seemed so familiar. Caroline saw that Jade was in a daze, so she reached over and poked her. Jade quickly shook her head and then politely extended her hand to Diane. "I'm sorry, Miss Foster. It's a pleasure to meet you." "Hello, Miss Winslet." Diane was slightly taken aback, but then reached out to shake hands. She rarely shook hands with others. Even if others took the initiative, she would generally refuse since she was slightly germophobic, but there was something about Jade that made her want to touch her. She realized that Jade had been staring at her curiously since she had walked in and still had a slightly dazed look on her face. Diane wondered what was going on. When Miss Jones brought over the contract, Jade didn't notice and kept staring at Diane. Diane gave her an amused smile and asked, "Miss Winslet, do you have any issues with the contract? Or is there something else you want to ask me?" Although she was a little embarrassed, Jade couldn't suppress her curiosity. "Miss Foster, I feel like I've met you before. Or perhaps you have relatives in the area who look like you. Maybe a brother or sister?" she asked awkwardly. She knew it was odd to ask such an important person about her family situation out of the blue, but Dario had mentioned an elder sister, and they did share a last name. Could this woman be his sister? That would be a small world indeed. When Jade asked about a brother, Diane was surprised. Although Dario was not her twin, they definitely looked alike. It appeared that this woman might know her younger brother. Was that possible? Diane was about to ask Jade why she wanted to know when Caroline interrupted. "Miss Foster, let's get this contract settled first. You know we don't have much time before we have to return to Washington." Diane masked her curiosity and pretended that nothing had happened. She said brusquely, "Yes, Miss Jones, would you please go over the details of the contract with them?" "Of course," the assistant replied, and then she quickly and precisely explained the contents of the contract. She told them which things to take note of and made some clarifications. When she had finished, even Jade, who had little experience with contracts, understood. Once she had finished, she looked at Jade and said with a smile, "All right, so there's going to be a press conference for the release of Phantom Mascara in 2 days. Does this conflict with anything in your schedule?" Caroline quickly checked the calendar on her phone and answered for Jade. "She starts filming tomorrow. She's the lead actress in Decadent Lady. It's hard to say yet if she'll be free then." Caroline knew that there would be a lot of media at a press conference for a company like Adele Barracu, and that it would be good for Jade to appear in front of that crowd. However, as an agent, she had to make it appear that her actress was in high demand. "Oh, is that so? Well, we certainly hope that Miss Winslet can attend," Miss Jones replied. She didn't want to force her to come. She glanced carefully at Diane but said nothing else. After looking through the contract, Jade signed her name. Then Diane took them to the studio, which had been specially set up for the new product release. It was a large studio that also contained a dressing room, washroom, and even a lounge. The equipment and photographers were all first class. Apparently, this new product release was very important to them. On that day, they wanted Jade to shoot some commercials and be photographed for a series of promotional posters. "Miss Jones, please take Miss Winslet to makeup," Diane ordered. "Certainly, Miss Winslet, please follow me," the assistant said. She took Jade to the VIP dressing room. The room was full of mirrors and lights, and of course, all the cosmetics were from Adele Barracu. The company had arranged for her to have a makeup artist who took care of all the big film stars. As the makeup artist began to work, she raved. "Your skin is so perfect, I barely need to use any foundation." Most of the stars she worked on desperately needed her skills to look good on TV, but she thought this gorgeous woman really didn't need her help. Episode 217. Say Yes to the Dress. As the makeup artist worked, she realized why their boss had hired this newcomer to endorse the new product. Her skin was perfect. She was young and fresh, and she would be a perfect match to highlight their new Phantom Mascara. The mascara focused on bringing out the best in the ordinary customer, making them extraordinary. They were hoping to expand their consumer base. They believed that Jade would do that. The makeup artist felt that Jade would appeal to a bigger crowd. "Honestly, I rarely use makeup," Jade explained with a little embarrassment. Her face began to turn red. She hadn't expected that the people at Adele Barracu would be so kind. She liked this place very much and no longer felt intimidated. The makeup artist kept her cosmetic use to a minimum. She wanted to keep Jade looking realistic and natural. They wanted to show that this type of makeup would be quick and easy to put on. It was perfect for Jade, who was so tasteful and fresh-looking. "Okay, Miss Winslet, let's go and get you dressed," Miss Jones said as she led her to another room. When Jade entered the changing room and saw the dress hanging inside, she was stunned. She had never seen such a beautiful garment. It was a dazzling, long golden dress made of smooth silk that was unbelievably soft to the touch. The waist was encrusted with eye-catching diamonds. She didn't know if the diamonds were real, but even if they were just crystals, it was obviously a very expensive dress. Once again, Jade was shocked by the largesse of the Udell Barracu Company. They were so generous. Even though she was only supposed to wear the dress for the shoot and couldn't keep it, she was still very excited. With the stylist's help, Jade quickly put it on. Once the dress was on and zipped, the stylist gave a look of surprise. She exclaimed, "Miss Winslet, this dress looks gorgeous on you. It's as if it was designed just for you." Even Jade hadn't expected it to fit her so well. It was as if it had been tailor-made. How could a dress off the rack fit her so exactly? Had Caroline given them her measurements and had it altered? When she emerged from the changing room, everyone was stunned. Even Caroline, who was usually stingy with her compliments, gave her a thumbs up and a satisfied smile. But Diane's eyes flashed with surprise. Strange, this dress wasn't from their company inventory. It looked like it had been custom-made by one of the world's top designers. One look, and she could tell it was priceless. The diamonds at the waist were not the everyday variety. Few could afford such a dress, and their company certainly hadn't supplied it. Diane frowned and asked Miss Jones, "What happened to the other dress? Did the stylist change it?" I'm not sure." Her assistant was still mesmerized by Jade's beauty and barely heard what Diane was saying. Then she looked more carefully at what Jade was wearing. It was not the dress that they had arranged for her earlier. That had been a lovely dress, but it hadn't been as elaborate as this one. Coupled with Jade's fresh makeup, the dress made her the brightest star in the room. She glowed even more brightly than the diamonds on her body. Standing shyly in front of everyone, Jade looked at herself in the mirror and was astonished. She'd been worried that she wouldn't live up to this brand, but now she felt 100 times more confident. She now knew that she would be able to handle this endorsement. Diane was still frowning. This dress obviously exceeded her budget. What was going on? Who had approved it? She quietly said to Miss Jones, "Go find out where this dress came from." "Yes, ma'am, I'll find out right away," she said, marching over to ask the stylist. Meanwhile, the photographer had begun taking pictures. Jade wasn't actually posing at the time, but the candid photos turned out perfectly. They looked very natural and spontaneous. That would be good for the campaign. As he took the photos, he gushed, "The new models cropping up are all so stunning. Every move and smile of yours will win people's hearts." His effusive praise made Jade's face turn red. Her unassuming and lovely appearance captured everyone's attention. The cameraman took a few more shots. She didn't try to pose. If she had, it wouldn't have been as effective. He had never seen such a natural model. Miss Jones had spoken with the stylist and had discovered that the dress had been delivered by someone named David Swan. When she heard the name, she was surprised. David Swan was a well-known business owner, but not exactly the type who would deliver clothes. The only person who could make him do that was his even more famous best friend, Dario Foster. The assistant didn't know much about Dario Foster and wondered why he would send such a dress over, and he had specifically said that it was for Jade. She had a vague awareness that he had some kind of connection with her boss and that he was a shareholder in the company. So she thought the decision must have been made by the board. Either way, the dress was far more suitable for Jade than the one the company had originally selected. The stylist had simply made the swap when the dress had been delivered for Jade. It had arrived right before she was supposed to be dressed, so there'd been no time to ask about it. She had just assumed that Diane already knew about it. When Diane found out that Dario was behind the mystery of the dress, her eyes betrayed an emotion that was hard to interpret. Episode 218. Diamonds are also a man's best friend. David had returned to the villa immediately after he had seen the dress on Jade. He rushed to the study. and gave Dario a shocked look. He asked impatiently,
"Seriously, Dario, the dress you gave Jade had colored diamonds on it? Were those the diamonds that you had delivered last month?"
Dario glanced up at him and asked indifferently,
"Is there a problem?" "Problem? I guess not, but that's pretty generous."
Even David, who was no stranger to extravagant, was overwhelmed by the gift. He hadn't expected that Dario would give such rare diamonds to Jade. It might have seemed almost normal if he'd just given them to her directly, but he had them sewn onto her clothes. This was beyond ordinary. David knew that colored diamonds were rare. Most diamonds were transparent, but colored diamonds were formed in the presence of certain elements or when diamonds underwent rare pressures during formation. Some colors were considered more uncommon or valuable than others. The most common colored diamonds were gold, brown, and green. Other colors, such as pink, red, and blue, were very scarce. For example, the Blue Hope diamond was considered one of the most valuable in the world, not just because of its size, but also its unique hue. Pink diamonds were only found in Australia, making them highly valuable as well. The diamonds on Jade's dress included both pink diamonds and blue diamonds, some of the rarest in the world. David had always been impressed with Dario's diamond collection, but he had never expected he would just give them away to Jade.
"Dario, what are you trying to do? Dazzle Jade with your love? Does she even know the dress is from you?"
he exclaimed. It was not like the cold and aloof Dario he knew to put so much effort into a piece of clothing. It appeared that Jade occupied a bigger space in his heart than David had suspected. Dario stood in front of the window. The sunlight shone on his face, making him look Adonis. He smiled, not thinking about the value of the diamonds at all. What he was thinking about was how Jade must have looked after she had put on that dress. He imagined she must have appeared exquisite. Even though he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he could imagine Jade wearing it. The picture in his mind brought a beautiful smile to his face. He seldom smiled in front of others, opting instead for an icy expression. Despite that, everyone considered him handsome. But when his face did light up with a smile, it was spectacular. David took a step back and looked at him in surprise.
"What the hell, Dario? Do my eyes deceive me? Did you just smile? For real? Is the world ending? No, don't laugh. That would be too much. With just that smile, you could win over every woman in the world. You're even tempting me to chase after you," he said, giving a chortle.
Then David realized sadly how few times he had actually seen his friend smile. Dario stopped smiling and glanced at him. His words had brought him back to reality. He realized he had let his guard down and was regretting it. David grinned and started to slip from the room.
"I'm just joking. You'll never be that attractive, even when you smile. Okay, I'm heading to the kitchen now. Time to see how your mother's cooking is coming along."
Dario sat quietly, his mind still immersed in the thought of Jade in that dress. The buzz of his phone interrupted his thoughts. As he had expected, the caller was his sister Diane. They rarely called each other. Since she had taken the initiative this time, he assumed it was regarding the dress. He smiled as he answered the phone.
A high-end brand like Adele Barracu would naturally need a top designer's clothing to promote their product,
he said, before Diane had a chance to speak.
"Since you design the newest product, you know how important that can be. What do you think? Is the outfit as eye-catching as the Phantom mascara you created?"
It was true. Diane was not only the president of their Adele Barracu branch, but she was also a lead designer. She narrowed her eyes suspiciously and said, "I have a feeling there is more to it than that." Dario thought her sixth sense was scarily accurate, but when Jade had first seen Diane, she had asked if she had a brother. Then Dario had sent someone to deliver this dress to Jade. It didn't really require a sixth sense to know that something was going on. She just wasn't sure exactly what it was.
"Aren't you so smart?" Dario said. "No wonder the company's so successful. You're right. It's not that simple. There is another reason."
Diane twitched. "What reason?" she asked slowly. After a moment, Dario said weakly,
"It was a surprise."
"What?" she asked. It sounded like he had intended to surprise her, but she didn't think he would have created that dress just for her. But what he had meant was a surprise for Jade. As soon as she found out about the endorsement offer, she had become nervous. He knew she hadn't wanted him to see how she felt, But how could he have not noticed? When she had seen how expensive Adele Barracue's products were and realized that she would be representing them, he had watched her become even more upset. But she still wouldn't talk to him about it, probably because she hadn't wanted him to worry about her. Dario knew that his wife had never been confident. Even though she was a good actress and very beautiful, she never felt she was quite good enough. And that was why he had commissioned a custom-made diamond-studded dress for her. The dress had nothing to do with his sister or her company. It had been all about Jade. From the day he had met her, he had started its preparations, knowing it would be used sooner or later. He had started working with the designer months before. The dress had been completely hand-sewn and was the result of a lot of money and hundreds of hours of work. Now that the dress had finally reached its owner, he could say it had all been worth it. Episode 219. Get Well Soon. After ending his call with Diane, Dario returned to his grandfather's room and found that he had awakened. The maid was feeding him some oatmeal. His appetite seemed to be improving. He was eating more than he had been, and his eyes seemed brighter. Maybe it was because he was happy to have his grandson back. Dario took the bowl of oatmeal from the maid. She quietly left and closed the door behind her. Dario's eyes were filled with a gentleness he rarely showed anyone else. He was remembering that his grandfather had fed him when he was a baby. He had never expected that he would be feeding his grandfather.
"When do you leave me?"
Walter asked hesitantly as he finished the bowl of oatmeal. There was a lonely look in his eyes. Dario was surprised to see it. Then he picked up a handkerchief and gently wiped his grandfather's mouth. Dario replied quietly, "Tomorrow." As Dario had expected, Walter's expression quickly changed to anger. He deliberately turned his head away and said coldly, "Get out now, and don't you come back. You don't know anything." As he aged, his temper was getting shorter and shorter, and he sometimes acted like a child. "If I don't come back, how will you find out about your granddaughter-in-law?" Dario asked with a teasing smile. Upon hearing this, Walter quickly turned his head to gaze at Dario. He had a surprised look in his eyes.
"What? From what you have said? Did you find a granddaughter-in-law for me?"
"Of course. I'm your grandson, and it's what you wanted. After all, how hard is it to find a wife?" He paused for a moment and warned, "But if you don't get well, I'm afraid you won't be able to meet her."
"Huh? I'm okay now. Hurry up and bring her over for me to meet her,"
Walter said eagerly. "Well, when you're better, then you'll be able to see her," Dario said, his expression still stern. Walter was angry. This brat. He's so arrogant that he dares to tell me what to do, he thought. But his heart was relieved. This brat acted like he had as a young man. Now that his grandson had admitted he had a partner, it seemed as if his dying wish would be granted. Then he began pelting his grandson with questions.
"Who is she? Is she pretty? How old is she? When did you meet her?"
he asked excitedly. But Dario didn't seem to want to answer him. He just sat there quietly with a faint smile on his face. Walter was angry when he saw that Dario was not willing to share anything. He said imperiously,
Do you think I can't find out if you don't tell me?"
"You'll have to wait until your body recovers," his grandson told him, narrowing his eyes.
"What? You're not lying to me, right? Let me ask you one question. Can't I even ask a single question?"
A trace of doubt flashed across Walter's eyes. Had his grandson made it all up? Dario's face remained calm and impassive. "Am I lying to you? Can't you have that checked out?"
"Oh, you're making less and less sense. I've raised a grandson who doesn't appreciate me,"
he said, turning his face to the wall. Realizing that his grandson wasn't willing to say more even when he was dying, he became even more curious. What kind of girl had he taken a fancy to? Dario knew his grandfather. If he told him everything about Jade, what would he have to look forward to? "Keep eating and take your medications. Then you'll recover, and I can tell you everything," Dario said, coaxing him like a child. Walter was getting tired, and his eyelids began to droop. Dario covered him with the blanket and was about to leave his room when he heard a familiar woman's voice outside. "Oh my, this isn't David, is it? Why are you here?"
"I could ask the same, Evelyn. It's so good to see you," David said with a smile.
Dario frowned when he heard the voices of Monica and Evelyn. Why are they here? He wondered, his brow furrowed in consternation. Did my mother arrange this? "Well, we came to check on Grandfather Foster. We also came to see Dario," Evelyn replied.
"Wait a minute. What about me? Honestly, didn't you know that I'm here too? I'm sure you came to see me," David said, teasing her.
"What are you doing? Get out of our way," Monica said as she pushed him aside in a domineering manner. Then she dragged her sister towards Walter's bedroom. Just as they reached the door, Dario came out and closed the door without batting an eyelash. He said coldly,
"My grandfather is a little tired."
"Well, since he needs his rest, we won't disturb him," Monica said with a smile. She was wearing her usual sunglasses and a sexy dress. She looked both enchanting and overbearing. Evelyn looked lovely in a white dress and delicate makeup. From the moment she'd come upstairs, her gaze had never left Dario. When she saw him, her eyes were filled with adoration. She smiled and rushed over to him, saying, "Dario, long time no see." Dario nodded absent-mindedly, and Evelyn's eyes flashed with pain.
"What he said to me last time can't really be true, can it? If it's true, what should I do?" she wondered.
"Hi, Dario, wow. You really are becoming more and more handsome, aren't you?" Monica said with an evil smile. As she spoke, she reached behind her and pushed Evelyn toward Dario. Evelyn had expected this. She just pretended she hadn't. It was all part of their plan. Then she acted surprised and screamed, "Ah, Monica, what are you doing?" She lunged in Dario's direction. There was expectation and desire in her eyes. Dario watched her coldly with no expression on his face. Just when Evelyn was about to pounce on him, he took a step back and quickly pulled David over to block him. Poor David was used as a human shield against her. When Evelyn fell against David, she looked at him awkwardly and whispered, "Thank you for catching me, David."
"It's okay, no problem,"
David said, as he looked at Dario with a grimace. Episode 220, The Unwanted Sister. David was furious. "Damn it, Dario, what are you trying to do?" he wondered. "Dario knows how much I like Monica. How could he betray me like this?" Evelyn was also upset. "I really didn't expect him to reject me like this," she thought, as her smile faltered. "Does he really hate me so much that he doesn't even want to touch me?" She looked at him, trying to catch his eye, but he ignored her. "Why can't he look at me?" she thought, filled with despair. "It's been 20 years, and he has never really seen me." Without a word, Dario grabbed Monica by the wrist and pulled her toward the study. She winced at the pain of his iron grip and yelled, "Hey, let go of me. What do you think you're doing?" She had never seen him so angry, and it scared her a bit. "Dario, let go of my sister," Evelyn exclaimed, looking at them anxiously. She didn't understand what was going on either. David decided to act, hurriedly chasing after them. "What the hell is he planning to do to my goddess?" he thought, feeling panicked. "Dario, let go of her right now," he roared. "If anything happens to her, I'll kill you." Dario didn't respond. He just shot a sharp glance at them before he pushed Monica into the study and locked the door. Dumbfounded, Evelyn and David looked at each other and then started banging hard on the door, but to no avail. Dario wasn't listening. Inside the room, Monica looked at him cautiously and asked, "Do you want to tell me what's going on?" She could sense his anger and felt anxious. He's always been respectful in the past, she thought. After all, I am his cousin. But now, he looks so angry. "You know damn well what's going on," he retorted, glaring at her. "What exactly are you trying to do? I told you the last time not to try this again." Monica didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a deep breath and sat down on the couch, pretending to be calm. She tidied her hair and straightened her clothes before she looked at him. "Why are you the one who's angry?" she scoffed, a trace of malice in her gaze. "You're the one who pushed my sister, knowing full well that she has liked you for over a decade." When he didn't respond, she continued. Although Evelyn isn't my biological sister, I think of her as one. Even our parents want you to marry her. Why are you always so cold toward her? He barked a short laugh and said, That's really all you care about, isn't it? Well, let me tell you again. I'm not interested in your sister. Not at all. Do you understand? His face was filled with disdain. But why not? Monica pleaded. Can't you try a bit harder? She's done so much for you. She really wanted to convince him to consider Evelyn one more time. I know that it's impossible for me to be with him in this lifetime, but Evelyn is different, she thought, and she is so in love with him. You're not listening, Dario exclaimed in frustration. I have no interest in her, no matter how much she does, so stop trying to push her on me. His eyes blazed with a cold fire, and Monica felt scared. He had never spoken to her like this before. If I don't let this go, I'll damage our relationship beyond repair, she thought despairingly. Okay, fine, have it your way, she said as she stood up and unlocked the door. When she stepped outside the study, her appearance shocked Evelyn and David. They had never seen her in such a sorry state. Her hair was messy and her eyes were filled with tears, while the despair on her face made David's heart ache. Monica, are you okay? He asked anxiously. Did that bastard hurt you? He wanted to comfort her, but backed away when he saw her contemptuous look. Get lost. What's the matter with you? She snapped and pushed him away. I'll never get the person I love, but the guy I don't want sticks to me like glue, she thought, feeling annoyed. Her reaction upset Evelyn, who asked angrily, Monica, what's wrong with you? She'd always known Monica to be in control and even a bit conceited, but now she seemed completely flustered. Hearing Evelyn's words, Monica glared at her and retorted, I'll tell you what's wrong. You need to fight for the person you want. Don't be so damn docile all the time. I'm going to remove myself from this messy situation, and now it's up to you to make something happen. Having said her piece, she put on her expensive sunglasses, pushed past the two of them, and left. Monica, wait! David exclaimed as he hurried to catch up with her. Before he left, he shot Dario an angry look. How could he behave so despicably? He thought, feeling disgusted. It's totally unacceptable to bully a woman like this. Evelyn stood frozen in place and stared blankly at Monica's retreating form. A trace of guilt appeared in her mind as she reflected on her words. I guess she's right, she thought, looking stricken. The person I love should be worth fighting for. She took a deep breath and, bracing herself, took a step toward Dario. I want to talk to you, she told him, trying to sound confident. It will take just a few minutes. She didn't actually know what to say. This was a man who could make even Monica cry, and she was so strong. Dario had been about to leave, but when he heard Evelyn's request, he nodded, walked back into the study, and sat down on the sofa. It's just a matter of time before things between me and her are resolved, he thought, feeling resigned. I was pretty clear on the phone the last time.